Hi guys, Scott here from Tabas Paranormal, and today I'm back with another video. So, since it's October and Halloween's just around the corner, what I've decided to do today is I've gone through eBay and I've picked out 10 different haunted dolls. Each of these dolls have a variety of different prices and all have different stories attached to them. That's including reports from people that have previously owned them, as well as a history of the spirit that is apparently attached to the doll. So dolls in the paranormal tend to go hand in hand. You'll see things in movies like Annabelle, or the famous case of Annabelle the doll, which I covered in my news video last month, where the doll was reported to be possessed by that of a spirit, or possibly a demonic entity. And yeah, so eBay is a good place where people put up dolls that they think may be haunted, or that they found that they're claiming are haunted, and they put them up for sale for a variety of prices and with a variety of stories. So I'm going to go through and have a look at some. So the first doll we've got here is listed on eBay as Genuine Haunted Doll Angelica, Positive Spirit Energy Stunning Vessel. Now, this doll costs £6.99 plus £4.99 postage. It's a fairly generic looking, sort of pale blonde doll of a young, looks like a young girl, is wearing a sort of purple gown almost and a hat with a matching style. It's a fairly generic looking doll. So attached to this doll is a description, which I'm going to read for you now. So Angelica, the doll, is 16 inches high, and the spirit that's attached to the doll was reportedly 17 years old and passed in 1911. Death was caused by natural causes. Angelica is a positive girl, super active and likes a chat with lots of laughter and bright sparkling orbs, last night and this morning. She does enjoy being out and about and loves watching TV and the radio. A sickly child born prematurely at 31 weeks, she was lucky to survive infancy. She was prone to chest infections throughout her short life, and one got her in the end. Always doing something. Very pretty and a real talking point. I have lots of vessels. I can hear these vessels. And she has told me all about her mother Jane and father Thomas. She had cats in the house, but they did keep chickens outside. She's really excited about meeting you. Fine with both children and pets. So this first doll doesn't really give much information in terms of activity that it's experienced around it, other than that of potentially having orbs. It's a fairly generic story of a young child who died at a tragically young age and was attached to a doll, or has attached to a doll that they potentially owned. The descriptions on a lot of these dolls are quite ropey at best. I've had to pick through and pick out all the sort of fact/details, because a lot of it is terms and conditions, so you can't sue them if the doll doesn't do anything when you buy it. So that's the first doll, Angelica. £6.99 plus £4.99 postage. You're looking about a tenner. It's not too bad in comparison to some of the ones we'll get onto in a minute. Yeah, it seems okay. Okay, next up we've got a doll that on eBay is just listed as Haunted Doll. In the description, it's later revealed this doll's name is Beth, and it costs £20 plus £5 for postage and packaging. Like the previous, it's a fairly generic blue-eyed, blonde-haired, pale girl in a dress. This time the dress is blue, it's got a couple of ribbons on it, and it comes with a straw hat. The description reads as follows. Name, Beth. Age of death, 16. Cause of death, car accident. Place of death, Whitby or Scarborough. Beth was a very happy teenager, getting ready for her O-levels at school. I feel the year was 1983. It was a warm day, and her boyfriend decided to take her out to Whitby for the afternoon, but she didn't get there. Beth was in her boyfriend's car when an argument started, and she was shouting for him to stop the car and let her out. He just put his foot down on the accelerator and started driving erratically. The road was very narrow, with blind corners. She held on to the seat and closed her eyes. She doesn't remember anything else. She was killed instantly when the collision happened. Beth loves to stand by the window and see the garden. She loves nature. She likes animals too. She used to have a dog and 2 cats. She likes to keep me company downstairs through the day. She's great with word apps and with a pendulum. I first communicated with her using automatic handwriting. I got a very clear connection with her. Beth's birthday month is February. The seller then goes on to say that I've worked as a psychic tarot reader for many years, and I've also been involved in clearing negative energies from homes. Some of my dolls were acquired during my clearance work, and others donated to me. If a doll catches your eye and speaks to your soul, you'll know it's the right doll for you. Again, a very sort of generic story to go along with this doll. It's more interesting than the first, I think, purely because it's a more tragic story. You get a bit more information from it in terms of the birthday of the doll, and this one actually claims to have, some activity associated to it in terms of automatic handwriting as well as word apps and the pendulum, which is interesting. Automatic writing I tend to find is a bit ropey. It's not the most accurate of methods of communication, and it's very easily suggestive, whereas word apps I tend to find work better. Are much more reliable, and obviously because it's an app you can't really influence it yourself. It depends on if you get a consistent app or not, which again, looking at some of my previous videos, varies. But overall, I think for £20 plus £5 delivery, this doll again isn't too bad. If you get some of the stuff that the seller has claimed they have got, then it may be worth the money, but that is something you'll have to see if you buy it for yourself. Okay, doll number 3 is listed on eBay as Haunted Porcelain Big/Large Doll Vessel. Like the first, in the description it goes on to reveal that this doll's name is Constance. Constance costs £50 plus £5 postage and packaging, which is more expensive. Similar to the others, it's a doll wearing a older style dress, what looks like a fake pearl necklace, has a ribbon in its long red hair, and again, large blue eyes, which seems to be a staple among dolls. The description goes on to claim that Constance was 16 years old when she died. Her mother was a lawyer, her father was a lawyer. Money was no object. Constance was very beautiful. She was full of confidence. She never felt the need to show off. From a young age, she was never afraid. Not afraid of any person. She learned everything she needed to know from her parents. She had high ideals. This was her doll that stood out, and she chose it for herself. It was a gift from her mother. She loved classical music. She often went to the symphony hall. She loved opera singers. She loved horse riding. She loved the very best when it came to clothes. The vessel's beautiful. It's bigger than your average porcelain doll. Her spirit is refined. She was graceful swan of the bird kingdom. The vessel turns TVs on. Her presence fills the house. Her brilliant content spirit. She works well with a Ouija board. Like the previous, this doll's very interesting. It's got a lot of detail in its story, talking about its mother, father, and talking about Constance as a whole. It says that it works well with a Ouija board as well as turning TVs on and off, which is also quite interesting, as that's a lot more activity than the others so far have really reported. For 50 quid, I don't know if it's worth that. I mean, again, if you're getting that level of activity, it could be, but without any sort of proof in advance, I don't know what you would really gain from it. If you had that sort of money to throw away on a haunted doll, I don't know if this is one that I'd get, because the story itself doesn't have that sort of level of detail I'd be looking for in terms of any negativity or anything that really stands out to me that there's anything in this doll other than someone's guesswork. But, it's an interesting doll. It's a doll that looks more high quality than the others. So in terms of craftsmanship itself, it's probably worth more, but I don't know from a paranormal perspective if I would be able to justify that price. Okay, so next up, we've got listed on eBay as Haunted Vintage Doll, Joyce, Active, Positive. This doll costs £15 plus £5.99 postage, so about 20 quid. Again, is wearing a sort of Victorian style dress, is pale in appearance. This one has long, curly, sort of black, almost glittery hair with bands in it, which it's probably the most stylistically different so far, which is good. A bit of variety there. So the description reads as follows. Joyce belonged to my late relative. She has attached herself to the toy belonging to a child in a city apartment in London. The family had reached out to the psychic community in a desperate attempt to explain the strange and huge amounts of paranormal activity going on in their home. They reached out to my late relative, who quickly... Unfortunately, the description isn't very clearly well written, so I don't actually know what that word is. The source of the lights flickering, footsteps, and movement of furniture and other objects. The family asked her to remove the doll, and then the home returned to normal. Through pendulum, EVP, and other methods of communication, we found she was a farmer's daughter, aged 8. Her mum passed when she was young, and she helped her father grow the farm and tend to the animals. She had a sweet, caring nature in life, and that has magnified in spirit. Animals love her, and so are drawn to her grace and love of all God's creatures. She sadly never remembered having her mother, and that's why she wanted to stay on Earth, because she never felt a mother's love, or her dad was a bit strict. She used to ride horses for fun. One day, she decided to go against her father's wishes and take her beloved horse Penny out for a ride. When the weather was rough, she was thrown from her horse and died of hypothermia alone in the wilderness. But this still doesn't stop her loving them. You may hear the gallop of residual wild horses and the soft giggles of a lost little girl. A strong female owner would be ideal for this special girl. Another interesting story to go with it here. I think the hearing residual horses and soft giggles is very interesting, as well as claiming that this doll works well with pendulum, EVP, and other methods of communication. Overall, I think this could be one of the more interesting of the dolls that I've viewed so far, and for 20 quid would be quite a good price. If the claims are as they say, and sort of the activity, continues to happen once the doll was in someone else's possession. Obviously, for me personally, this doll wouldn't be any good, as they'd recommend a strong female owner, which is fair enough. But yeah, overall, I think this doll could be quite interesting and would probably be quite a good value for money. Okay, so our next doll is listed as Haunted Cursed Doll Lily. Lily costs £60 with £4.50 postage and packaging. Lily is a very creepy doll with coloured out or burnt out eyes. I'm not entirely sure which. Lily wears a fur hood on a long red robe with a red dress underneath and red shoes. Almost a festive look to Lily. So the description reads, "This vessel belongs to Lily. This is a powerful cursed doll, but as with all cursed dolls, it must be used with extreme care or the curse will be reversed onto the person who initiates it." I don't know the history of Lily or her past life because she doesn't communicate in any paranormal way, but she is ever present around this doll. Her presence is strong when a curse is initiated, and you feel that you can almost reach out and touch her. Place the doll in a dark room with absolutely no light except 6 lit candles. Make sure there are no mirrors in this room, and any windows must be completely covered, as there should not be any reflective surfaces. Lie the doll down on a flat surface. If you have anything that belonged to the person who is to be cursed, no matter how tiny, place this on the doll. If you do not have anything, write the person's name on a scrap of paper and place that on the doll. Say the words, "Lily, do my bidding," and blow out 1 candle and repeat this until all 6 candles are out. Leave the doll in the darkened room for 6 hours. Once the spell is done, it cannot be reversed, no matter how long it may take to come into play. So this is an interesting doll, as they claim there's very little paranormal activity around it, other than the feeling of a presence. The curse on the doll, or the curse the doll can give onto people, is very interesting. It sounds to me like some form of witchcraft may be being claimed here. I personally am not a strong believer in that sort of form of paranormal activity. Witchcraft as a whole and the cursing using spirits is something that I struggle to believe, but again, I don't claim to know the answers. This is quite an interesting doll, and I would be interested to know more about it. Specifically, whoever buys it, I would like to know more about their use for it. I would imagine that this doll, being £60, would be used more so to try and claim easy money off people that are in a particularly bad state. I'd imagine that being someone that wishes a curse upon someone else, you're probably more likely to be willing to pay for that, and you're more likely to be targeting someone that has done you wrong or has upset you in some way, which would be interesting. I would like to know obviously more about this doll going forward, and whoever buys it, if you see this, please get in touch. Okay, so the next doll is, in my opinion, the most ridiculously priced and is listed on eBay as Lucan. Haunted Regression Doll, Powerful. This doll comes in at a quite pricey £120 plus £4.50 postage and packaging. So Lucan appears to be a young male doll, which is very rare in what I've seen online in my research. A lot of haunted dolls are young female dolls. Lucan here seems to be a young male doll, wearing a brown, almost suit, very sort of Victorian era clothing, and generic sort of brown shaggy hair, blue eyes, and very pale with blush on the cheeks. So the description of this doll reads that this doll is so very handsome, but I don't like what it's capable of and its ability to control. He came from America, where a woman who said that the doll had been used by a group of university students who were investigating paranormal activities. It isn't known how it all started, but a young woman who owned the doll found that when she placed the doll on her lap, she was drawn to look in a mirror. In a trance-like state, she saw the room change around her, and she felt like she was being forcefully pulled back. But beside her, she saw the ghostly figure of a young man. He did not communicate directly, but she knew his name was Lucan. Images of people appeared in the mirror, and some she recognised as very old relatives who she had seen in old photographs. And then she saw a young girl looking back at her. The girl looked nothing like her, yet she knew that it was her, and she knew that she was looking at a previous life. She only became frightened as she watched the girl age and die, and her image faded, and at that moment she was released from the trance. Each time she used the doll, she was dragged further back, and Lucan appeared beside her and guided her. Lucan was introduced to the other students in the group, and several of them, some reluctantly, had very similar experiences. I'm not brave enough to use the doll, but my friend did, and he said that the experience was terrifying. He refuses to talk about it and is advised that the doll should be passed on. This is a large, heavy and expensive doll. It's 22 inches tall, his eyes are glass, and his body is by sheer elegance. The head is stamped Germany 1994 with other imprints in wonderful condition. So Lucan has a very interesting claim to it here, that it presents some sort of post-life vision or some sort of supernatural vision, and also has the ability to pull the owner or someone near it into a trance-like state, which is interesting, but I find would be quite easily documented. I've not seen anything online, and I did admittedly a very small bit of research, but I didn't find anything online about this group of students that were studying the paranormal, so I don't know if that means that while studying it they gave up and didn't report their findings, they didn't find anything specific with the doll, or that this is all just a lie completely. For £120, I don't know if it's justified. If the doll can do what they're claiming it can do, then there is a much greater chance that it would be worth the money, but I think just by chance, I don't think that it would be worth £125. That being said, if someone were to buy it and were to document the experiences with the doll, I think it would be very interesting and would definitely be interested in seeing more from that. Okay, so our next doll is Genuine Haunted Doll Madison, Positive Spirit Energy, Old Vessel, and costs £5.99 plus £4.99 postage and packaging. This doll's unique in that it's the first doll we've seen to have green eyes, has your stereotypical sort of outfit and hat, which is a Victorian era pink frock gown sort of thing, with a thrilling neck piece, and has long, quite messy in this case, but that could be due to the care of the doll, brown hair. This doll is Madison, and the spirit attached to it was 28 when it passed in 1873. Death was caused by drowning. Madison's a positive girl, super active and likes a chat with lots of shadows and white orbs last night. She does enjoy being read to. Her last job was in a little bookshop, always doing something. Very pretty and a real talking point. I have lots of vessels, I can hear these vessels, and she has told me all about her family of 2 children and her collie dogs, and that she is really excited about meeting you. Fine with both children and pets. Now, from a interesting point of view, that description is very similar to, I believe, the first or second doll that I looked at in this video. I believe it's the same seller, and it looks like they may use a template for the descriptions, which really hurts the credibility if it's a legitimate thing. There's not really any claims of activity with this doll for £10. I don't know if you'd be necessarily getting ripped off, because I genuinely believe the doll's probably worth more than that on its own. But as a haunted item, I don't buy it, and I'm not convinced. Okay, next up is the creepiest looking doll in my opinion. This one's listed on eBay as Haunted Doll Sally Lee, Paranormal Negative Energy, and costs £15 plus £2.79 delivery. This doll's quite a dishevelled looking woman in black, with black hair and a hood. I believe this doll also has a cross around the neck, and from some pictures, specifically the one I'm looking at the moment, looks like it may be missing its arm. So let's see what we've got here. So according to the description, Sally Lee was a 6-year-old girl who lived in Florida, America. Sally loved shoes, chocolate and dolls. Sally had autism and asthma. Sally would get constantly bullied at school for being asthmatic and autistic. The other kids were very mean to her, and Sally constantly felt left out and upset. Sally loved dolls, but the little girl didn't have many. Sally just had a small doll called Abby and a doll called Charlie she was born with. Before Sally's birthday, unfortunately, Sally passed away. After Sally's passing, the one doll she had since she was born, called Charlie, had a spiritual energetic energy that would linger around the doll. Sally's parents were so understandably upset that they gave Charlie away. The doll is charismatic and kind and works well with a Ouija board. So again, another Ouija board claim, which is interesting. The price of the doll is quite cheap, but the condition of the doll is not that impressive. I personally wouldn't purchase this just because it doesn't look to be in a very good state and doesn't really have any particular information or claims with it that appeal to me. Again, the story is quite generic and detailless. It sort of points out a lot of unnecessary details. The bullying part of the story is quite sad and would probably lead to a bit of negative energy being around the doll, so that could explain the paranormal negative energy that is associated with the doll, but I'm not particularly sure this doll would be worth the investment. Okay, next up we have a doll listed on eBay as Active Haunted Doll Stacy, Child Spirit, Paranormal, Positive. This doll only costs £5 with £3.99 delivery and is a lot smaller than some of the other ones. Again, a sort of pale, fair-skinned, blue-eyed, blonde girl in a blue coat this time, with a white dress underneath and earmuffs. This obviously looks to be a fairly festive kind of doll, just based on the clothing. The description is as follows. Stacy is a highly active haunted doll. She's 7 years old and fell from a bridge in Devon, UK. She likes animals and laughter, and that's why she didn't want to pass to the light. She enjoys having her hair stroked, listening to music, and being around family and love. She shows herself as a very clear apparition, The smell of lavender and rose may waft through your home. Small faint giggles and cupboard doors opening and closing are an everyday occurrence. Very positive, very sweet, and very caring. So this doll stands out to me more than some of the others because it's got a link to Devon, which is where I'm from. The activity that they claim from this doll is also very interesting, claiming that this spirit shows itself as a very clear apparition, which is quite a bold claim to make. The smell of lavender and roses wafting through the home. I don't think I know what roses smell like. Off the top of my head, lavender, quite a noticeable smell. Small faint giggles and cupboard doors opening as well, quite noticeable stuff. So for £8, I feel that this would be quite a worthwhile doll, at least in terms of price. There's not a lot else to it. There's not a lot of background on the doll, but whoever buys it could theoretically look to find out more information themselves if they wanted. And it would just be quite interesting to see what happens there. This is a doll out of the lot so far that I'm the most invested in, and this would be the only one so far that I would be likely to purchase myself. So I may have a look into doing that at some point. Okay, so finally I've left an interesting doll. This one's listed on eBay as Haunted Doll Wendy Georgia. Coming in at only £24 with free postage and packaging, it's not particularly expensive for the quality of the doll. That would probably be worth it alone. This is a fairly high quality looking doll, long brownish red hair, is wearing a frilly top, a jacket and a skirt with a pair of shoes, and seems to also have green eyes like one of the previous. The description is as follows. Attached to this gorgeous 17-inch doll are the spirits of Wendy, 37, and Georgia, 6. These wonderful spirits were both mother and daughter in life. While communicating with these two, I found that Wendy likes to come through and is much more confident than Georgia. Wendy is great when using telepathy and pendulum. Georgia's getting better at using the pendulum, and I feel would benefit from a keeper that would be open to spending time with her and maybe trying out new ways to communicate. When communicating with Wendy, she gives me tension in the front of my head, usually making me need to hold my head up because it's so often quite painful. But I do not believe she means to harm me. These spirits passed away sometime in the 1600s. I could not get either of them to tell me how they passed, but they told me they both passed on the same day. I didn't want to push them too much, as I understand this can be a sensitive topic for a lot of spirits. It's probably worth noting that Wendy and Georgia are not their real names, but names they chose to go by. I'm currently not aware of any more information on these two confusing spirits. I'll write to the buyer if I figure out anything new before the doll is sold. So again, an interesting doll, and the only one I've seen that has a claim of having two spirits attached to it, which in and of itself is an interesting fact. I think, again, the quality of the doll makes the price worth the money easily, but there's not a lot here. There's a lot of information, but it doesn't feel like filler to me. I think the fact that the doll is potentially, or the claims are the doll can communicate via pendulum and other methods is interesting, but the fact that the names aren't real, the method of death isn't there, and the precise date or year of death also isn't there, makes me sceptical as to the validity of a lot of what I'm reading here. But again, for the price, the doll's worth the money just for the doll, and it would be interesting to know if anything else does come from it using other methods of communication. Okay, so that was 10 potentially haunted dolls that are listed on eBay that you could theoretically buy right now if you wanted to. Most of those dolls didn't appeal to me particularly. One or two of them I did find quite interesting, specifically the second to last one with links to Devon, and because that doll's of quite a cheap price, I think I'll look into it and potentially may buy that and do a follow-up video on it. But the £120 doll I don't think is worth the money. Some of the other dolls, while the stories are interesting, don't have a lot of activity linked with them, but there are one or two that stood out. Generally, anyone that buys a haunted doll may have to expect that that doll could end up having a spirit attached to it. And it would be interesting to know if anyone has bought one, and if so, any activity they've had from it. And if not, let me know in the comments below if you would consider buying a haunted doll, and if so, what sort of doll you'd want. But until the next video, this has been Scott from Tepper's Paranormal, and I'll see you later.